Alumni. I'm Linda Domyanic, Weil's Client and Alumni Relations Manager for our Dallas office. In this role, I'm responsible for Dallas's marketing and business development efforts, communications, affinity groups, and alumni relations. Over my 14 years at Weil, I've had the privilege of working with many of our Dallas alumni, and I truly value the connections we've been able to maintain. Today, I'm very pleased to be hosting this edition of the Weil Alumni Interview Series with one of our distinguished attorneys, Regina Merson. Regina was in our restructuring department based here in Dallas. She is the founder and creator of Rayna Rebel, a Latinx-focused makeup brand. Regina immigrated to the US from Mexico when she was 10 years old, and it was that dual identity that influenced her development of the makeup line. Growing up, she witnessed two things that planted a seed for what would become Rayna Rebel. Her mom putting on makeup to leave the house, and the Mexican soap opera, Rosa Salvaje. Since launching her makeup line in 2016, Rayna Rebel has been featured in publications such as Forbes, Refinery 29, Allure, Vogue, and even the Oprah magazine. The brand has been sold at Amazon, Target, and Walmart. Welcome, Regina, and congratulations on the success of Rayna Rebel. Thank you for joining us today.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. So you launched your makeup line in 2016. Tell us about Rayna Rebel and what inspired you to launch it.
Sure. I think, really my immigrant journey was a big push in this direction, in the sense that I was always a woman that had a lot of dualities I had to contend with in my education, in my language, in what was happening at home versus what was happening outside of my life. I always felt kind of betwixt and between these two identities of being what I call this Mexican woman living this like incredible American life. And I really, as I got older, and particularly when I was actually working as an attorney, I really realized that that duality for me was a tremendous asset in my life, but it needed a place to sort of self-express. And so, for example, when I was an attorney at Weil, one of the places that I really felt was kind of a moment for me to show those dualities is I would show up, and maybe you remember this, but I would show up in my legal attire, but I always had kind of like a small wing and a bright red lip. And it was things like that I think people always thought, oh, wow, she had time to do her makeup this morning. And for me, it was really more about having an outlet to express these dualities and be true to my heritage, while also kind of embracing these new opportunities I was getting that were, a big win for me and for my family, for sure. So those were sort of the origins. And then through that, there was a tremendous sense of frustration for me that I knew I was buying so much makeup. And you maybe also remember this. I had a box from Sephora coming into my office every single day because makeup was such a passion of mine. But I was very frustrated by what was out on the market. There were a lot of different brands, and I had to kind of like hobble this collection that felt very authentic to me from, 100 different brands, because nobody really understood what I was trying to get out of makeup. And that was a very cultural thing that I was trying to get out of makeup. So that frustration led to research. And the research was, of course, like, wow, I'm not the only Latina girl sitting in an office ordering boxes and boxes from Sephora. We're actually the largest consumers of beauty products in the country. And we spend 2x on beauty what all of our counterparts spend in a year. And there's no makeup line that authentically is like speaking to us or gets us, right? There's this tremendous, I'm going to call it a misconception, a misunderstanding about who we are, right? People think we're very cheap. We're very value focused. We do not spend money on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And in the beauty space, that couldn't be farther from the truth. So there was just so much frustration around that misunderstanding. And then also the proposition that to market to us and to our community is as easy as taking a tagline that you would put in People magazine, put it into Google, translate it, and voila, like we're going to buy it because you put it in our native language. And that again is just such a misconception. So that was sort of the genesis of the idea was what happens if you create a makeup line that speaks to this, but does so in a very authentic way. And the only way to do it authentically is to have someone from within the community do it. So that was how the line started.
Well, I have to say too that I do remember and your style, and it was fabulous. So I feel like you're kind of one of my style muses. So definitely. Are there elements from your Weil training or your experience at Weil that you carry with you today?
Sure. I mean, so many things. The training was really invaluable because it gave you a tremendous sense of not only resilience, I think, but stamina, right? So being an entrepreneur in anything that you do is so incredibly challenging. It is by far the hardest thing I have ever done. And I like to think of myself as someone who has done hard things. I think Weil gave me the training to do a lot of hard things, to be tested personally, to have my upper limits really pushed and tested. And entrepreneurship basically does that every day, all day long. And so I feel like I have a stronger constitution to handle some of that battering because I was a Weil, and I mean that just in the sense that it was tremendous, sort of intellectually rigorous training. I also, obviously, I do all my own legal work, which is incredible. And there are so many missteps. And this is just general training as a lawyer. There's so many missteps that entrepreneurs make in the early days that end up just completely unseating companies and projects because people don't know really how to issue spot and kind of be analytical. And a lot of the executive function that you take for granted, but that is part of kind of learning how to do things the Weil way, serves you incredibly well when you take on big projects outside of the firm. So I definitely felt that training was incredibly helpful.
That's great. It's good to know that. I mean, what advice would you have for other lawyers who might be considering entrepreneurship?
So there is as much as we just talked about the training and how wonderful it is, there is an element of if you're thinking of leaving law, that you have to detrain, untrain from certain tendencies we have. The biggest one of those is how risk averse we become, right? We are trained to be risk averse, and we're trained to be risk averse in particular for our clients because we want to protect and manage and control. And when you leave law and you want to go into entrepreneurship, it is all risk. And it is very hard to get comfortable with that risk. I'm still not really comfortable with it, I'll be honest. And I think the sort of spiritual, psychological side of things is, are you risk averse? Could you train yourself to be to sort of love risk a little bit more? And the second counter to that is also, are you okay with failing, right? The majority of entrepreneurship endeavors and projects fail. And, when you're a lawyer and you're trained to you just don't fail. That's not something that really happens very often. You have to get comfortable with that because those feelings can sort of drown you. And I have a lot of friends that are in this space now who have started all sorts of businesses. And it's amazing to me how much more comfortable they are with failure. So, my very first step is, get comfortable with yourself and being able to understand what your weak spots are in that kind of space and where you need to work, and do the internal work first to see if you kind of have the personality for it. Because I think there are so many people, myself included, who have wonderful, brilliant ideas, but you're the one that shows up every day. And if your kind of vibe is you're so freaked out all the time and it really kind of unseats you psychologically, you can't push forward when things get really hard. So that would be the first thing. The other thing I did was I was very academic about it, and you probably don't know this, but as I was working on this idea, I was still working at Weil. And this was kind of the side project that I was working on in the backdrop for doing research when I had free time and things like that, is I signed up for a class because to me, it's the first stop is, a CLE, or, school. So I took a class at SMU actually that happened at night once a week. And I think it went on for 3 months, and it was about starting your own business. And it was in the business school at SMU. So I would leave work every Wednesday night for an hour and a half, and I'd go to SMU and I'd take this class and I would come back. And I had to carve out the time because it was sort of, the mindset was about taking one step towards it, right? And for me, it's like, if I can academically understand, someone can break this down for me in language that I understand, it will make me more comfortable to maybe take the second step. So, it's identifying things like that, because it's very nervy, especially in the beginning. So I did things like that. And I've since taken quite a few like executive MBA type programs. So don't, the myth that like you just jump in and you do it. I think for lawyers, sometimes you do need a little bit of like to layer a little bit of academic coaching around it to get you comfortable with what it looks like and have someone else sort of explain it to you in terms that we're more comfortable with. So that would be another, piece of advice that I have that I think worked for me, because it made me just like feel like I had my arms around some sort of structure, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. And I think a lot of that, some of the things you said too translates beyond entrepreneurship. Just in life in general. So I think that's a really good.
Yeah. And it is about just taking a step, right, too. Because one step leads to a second step, and it's just so outside of our comfort zone. It still feels that way for me at times, certainly.
And who wants to fail?
Nobody wants to fail.
Right. I don't.
Nobody wants to fail. And I think the third piece of advice I also just would add to that is be prepared for whatever it is that you think you might want to do to take a lot longer than you expect. It will take a lot longer to leave your job. It will take a lot longer to launch whatever. Everything just takes twice as long as you think it's going to take. It's kind of like, that's also one of the Weil, right? We're going to close this deal next week. And then it's like, no, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. So that's sort of the same. It's the same speed.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
So switch gears a little bit. In a few weeks, we'll begin to honor Hispanic Heritage Month here at Weil. How will Rayna Rebel Day be commemorating the month?
So every year, this is what we call like our Super Bowl. Even though it's sort of funny, it's like a made up holiday. So a lot of people in the Latinx community have started sort of being like, we don't need this holiday. We celebrate it all year round. But we still think as a brand, it's a very important time to just sort of stop and really spend the time to highlight what it means. One of the things about our community, and not just in my business, but just in general, is we're not a monolith. And I think that's where a lot of people from the outside think we're this monolith, right? It's like, we all speak the same language. We all do the same things. We eat the same foods. Couldn't be further from the truth. We are incredibly diverse community. We've got the Afro-Latino population on the East Coast, which is, the Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans. We've got Mexicans and Venezuelans on the West Coast. We've got Florida, we've got Texas. And it's for us, it's always about celebrating these nuances and trying to bring to light all the kind of like microcosms of different cultures we've got under this Latinx umbrella. So this year, we always celebrate in two ways. We try to bring to light people's stories and different women in our larger community from different parts of the country that have different heritages to light, to talk a little bit and educate, because I think we're also very geographically segregated in that way. And the second thing is we always pick one or two charitable kind of endeavors that we pursue depending on what is going on in that moment of immigration. We've done this amazing program with lawyers that get sent to the border to represent immigrant families there. We've supported that. When the El Paso shooting happened a couple of years ago, we kind of were supporting initiatives around trying to do a little bit of gun control work and lower the incidence of violence. So, this year we haven't quite decided. There's so much going on with COVID and everything else, but it will be a celebration of women in different pockets of our community, and particularly the entrepreneurial spirit that is in our community. The Latinx female population tends to start businesses at like an alarmingly fast rate. And so it's about bringing those stories to light. And then, like I said, there'll be a charitable component.
Nice. I look forward to hearing more about that then.
Yeah.
Seeing it. Regina, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. It's been an absolute pleasure learning more about Rayna Rebel Day, and you definitely are making the Weil family proud. And I have to say, you've also inspired me, just as I've learned more about Rayna Rebel Day, to tap into my Rebel Queen. So thank you.
Good. Well, it's so nice to see you again. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you. It's good to see you. And Weil Alumni, thank you for joining us for this edition, and continue to stay connected and look for additional programs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.